Now, for a deeper look at South Korea's economy, we're joined by Troy Stangarone. He's Senior Director of the Korea Economic Institute right here in Washington. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Now, as we saw, there are these popular TV dramas in the entertainment industry. What sort of impact do you think that's having on the economy overall?
Well, it's having a very positive effect, especially right now when exports are down. Cultural content and cultural exports are becoming significantly more important, both in terms of tourism, in terms of things like beauty products. There's some surveys that indicate maybe up to 2/3 of the people who buy Korean beauty products do so because of the cultural content they've seen. So you have increased tourists who are coming, buying more Korean goods, and at the same time, it's boosting Korea's brand around the world.
Now, beauty is one of those brands that continues to thrive, but let's also look, as you said, about the exports. They dropped for 15 straight months in March. So how is the government coping with this?
Well, they're taking a series of different measures. One, they're looking to do corporate restructuring. They're taking and supplying different state investment banks money to take and help companies take and restructure their industries. They're also looking to take and try and promote things like the cultural side more abroad to increase exports of cultural products. And they're also trying to boost demand at home. Korea also went through a period of sluggish domestic demand, and that's starting to shift now as well.
Now, we also know that electronics, vehicles, machinery, those are usually the big drivers when it comes to South Korea's economy. Do you think that's going to continue to be the case?
I think they'll continue to be important, but we're also going to see some shifts. If you look, for example, at Samsung, one of the things that they've been looking into doing is getting into the biotech industry. Many of the initial precursors in biotech, in terms of producing them, are similar to producing silicon chips and semiconductors, which is something Samsung is very good at. And so it's an area where they think they can see a lot of progress going forward.
Now, how are they actually faring at the moment?
Well, Samsung went through a period of about 2 years to where they saw revenue decline. And they've recently turned that around. The Samsung Edge was one of the products that helped to do that. But at the same time, Lee Young, now that he's taken control, is starting to reshape the company. And he's doing a series of things, such as selling off parts of the company that aren't really part of the future to take and build up capital to take and invest in future growth. So Samsung has had it rough, I think, but I think they're about to turn things around.
Now, you also have obviously developments in the car industry. So how would you say Hyundai is keeping up?
Hyundai has also had some trouble. China has been slowing down, and as Chinese growth slows, it also slows Hyundai's growth. They've also faced a problem in the terms of getting some plants started up in China as well. When Park Geun-hye met with Xi Jinping, he was able to help and remove some of the red tape in that. So hopefully they can turn things around the Chinese market. But you're seeing slowdowns in global growth around the world, and so that's impacting Hyundai's success as well.
Now, one thing people are always looking at is how are consumers spending? How is it that South Korea is able to get its consumers to spend?
Well, they've done a few things recently. One, they have a holiday coming up, and they're putting a temporary holiday in to try and get people out, get them out spending. They put some temporary taxes in place in terms of taking and reducing taxes on cars, luxury good items, and some other things to try and boost consumption there. But they're also Korea has a high level of debt in terms of personal debt, and so they've put in place some plans over the past few years to try and take and reduce consumer debt as well.
Now, one thing people are also looking at is the surprise upset that came along with April's legislative elections. We saw that South Korea's ruling party actually lost its majority. So what does that mean for economic policies going forward?
Well, this was really a very surprising outcome. Everyone thought the ruling party would win. Instead, they ended up losing about 30 seats in the election. Going forward, no party actually has a majority in the National Assembly. And some people think this could lead to gridlock, but ultimately, because you have to take and work together, I think this could actually take and help economic policy. Both parties tend to agree on things like a need to increase minimum wage, a need to reform welfare, a need to do corporate restructuring. And so now they'll hopefully be able to split those differences and pass constructive legislation.
Now, with that being said, people tend to look at South Korea as the so-called canary in the coal mine. It's usually the country that people look to when they come to predicting what's happening with the global economy because of their relationship with the US, China, and Japan. Now, some analysts say Korea could be heading for a crisis. What do you make of that assessment?
I think South Korea has different structural issues it needs to address, but I think crisis is probably going too far. If you look at things like labor reform, which is something the government's been trying to do, or labor market reform, if you look at things like corporate restructuring, if you look at the investments they're putting in place, if they can take and push these things through, I think they can perform well. But ultimately, you're looking at an economy that, because of demographics, is going to slow down over time.
And just quickly, in terms of the potential economic challenges for South Korea, what are the standouts for you?
Well, really, labor market reform is the key from my perspective. You know, as you said in the segment beforehand, youth unemployment is over 11%, which is much higher than overall unemployment. and getting the youth into productive jobs so that way they can build a tax base, help pay for the welfare reform, and take and create productive careers that'll keep the economy moving forward is probably the key for South Korea.
All right, we'll have to leave it there. Troy Stangarone, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
If you like what you just saw, follow us on social media and visit our website, cctv-america.com.